sixth mantra and the seventh mantra is talking about a very high spiritual state. Sixth mantra talks of a spiritual state where you have reached a state of partial realization known as Savikalpa Samadhi, where you have crossed the extrinsic illusion. And the seventh mantra talks about a rare soul who's attained that state of absolute realization or self-realization when you have crossed the intrinsic illusion as well. One who is caught up in the illusion experiences a sense of plurality, where we are caught up in the names and forms. What defines our experiences is otherness, which creates a disparity, which creates a vijigupsa, which creates an abhorrence. That's what the mantra says, na vijigupsate. So the spiritual evolution could be measured where there is no enough reason you could justify to engender or entertain any hatred or a negative emotion to any individual or to any particular society, to community, to anybody for that matter. So there is no, you don't find a reason to justify it for me to hate you. Why should I use a reason to justify my negativity towards you? So there is no more hatred, there is no more otherness. Remember the famous words of Christ, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. He said that when he was on the cross. Why can't I say that when somebody insults me? Why can't I say that when somebody doesn't agree, just agree to my line of thought? I can afford to say that, can't I? So there is no otherness. So this gradually starts to disappear and the perception of oneness starts to appear. So are you the perceiver of oneness or are you the perceiver of otherness? That determines how spiritual, what is your spiritual standing? That determines. And that is what the sixth mantra says. All of that has dissolved, where you see yourself in everything and you see everything in me. You see the Atman reflecting, you see the God, the substratum, the common denominator. It is there everywhere. And you see everything that you perceive as nothing but the self, and you see the self in everything. A simple example that is given. When I look at myself in the mirror, from the head to my toe, including my hair, my nails, everything, I say it's me, it's mine. My limbs, my torso, every part of it is me. And I see myself in every part of my body, isn't it? Exactly the same way, when I look at the world, I should look at my own self reflecting in everything. And when I look at myself. I see myself in everything. So the world and me are one. But there is a duality. You experience the duality. You experience Brahman everywhere. So the plurality becomes the duality, and the duality becomes the non-dual Brahman, which is that one, which is what is captured in the seventh mantra. So this is what we have dealt in detail. So just thought, because of the little gap we had, just to rebrush your understanding as to what was said in the sixth mantra. So the text now is going to take us into that experience of that self, where you cross the intrinsic illusion as well. Now, please do take note that the text doesn't directly talk of these illusions. It is that which we are extracting from the contextual reference. It doesn't, the verse doesn't mention anything of it. Okay. Mantra 7, please. Yasmin sarvani bhutanyatmaiva bhudvijanatah tatra ko moha ka shoka ekatvamanupashyatah. Yasmin sarvani bhutanyatmaiva bhudvijanatah tatra ko moha ka shoka ekatvamanupashyatah. Ekatvam anupashyatah. The perceiver of oneness. Ka shoka ko moha. What delusion, what grief can there be for that seer of oneness? The second line he says that. Yasmin sarvani bhutani. To the realized one, all beings have become the very self. Vijanataha. Vijanataha. The last word in the first line, Vijanataha, means to the realized one. Sarvani bhutani. Atma. Eva. They have become the very self. Eva means very. Atma, self. Sarvani bhutani, all beings. Yasmin, to the realized, all beings have become the very self. Now the Sanskrit word abhutaha. Yasmin sarvani bhutani. Atmaiva bhu dvijanataha. So abhut vijanataha, has become. So the Sanskrit word abhut, abhut, has become, means the language has become refers to the past tense. It's already finished. The transformation has already happened. You already transcended the illusion. You've already attained that state of realization. Yasmin, the word S, Yasmin, means in whom, in which. The word Yasmin is derived from two Sanskrit words, Yaha and Yat. Yaha means he who, Yat means in which. I hope you all are following. Basic Sanskrit. Yasmin, Yaha means he who, which is indicating a personality, yet in which indicates a neutral sense. There's no personality. Now, what does it mean? This individual has become that mass of the homogeneous mass of the reality. There's no more individual. So in merely using the two Sanskrit words, he says the individuality has gone, the totality has gained. Yasmin. That's the power of the language. One word he has captured. Yasmin, Yaha is he who. He who means it could be any one of us, individual. When the individual merges with yet is that which, into which refers to, in which refers to a neutral mass of reality into that consciousness. So when the individual merges with that consciousness, there is no more individual, you become the totality. Just like when the river merges with the ocean, there is no more the individual river, it becomes the ocean. Often there's a parallel given. And to one who has become that very self, to that perceiver of oneness, ka shokaha, ka moha. There is no delusion, there is no shoka, there is no sorrow, there is no grief to that perceiver of oneness. No Vijayagupsa. Vijayagupsa is gone in the previous mantra. Here the shoka and moha. In the previous mantra, moha still existed. In this mantra, moha also gone. There's no more delusion that you are not the individual. You are the self. And he has experienced it. Now, in the fourth and the fifth mantra, if you remember, if you go back to the fourth and fifth mantra, we learned about that state, what that reality is. If we quickly go to the fifth mantra, did we not describe Brahman with reference to the macrocosm and the microcosm? The Brahman was described with reference to the macrocosm and the microcosm, the 4 and 5. In the sixth mantra, he's talking about that individual approaching that state, tat. In the fourth and the fifth mantra, he's describing tat. The Sanskrit word tat means that. That refers to Brahman. I'm just giving you a thought flow. Fourth and fifth mantra is talking about tat, which is that, which is Brahman. Sixth mantra is talking about one who is approaching tat. Saha is he. The Sanskrit word saha is he, the individual, approaching tat, that, Brahman. In the seventh mantra, that saha becomes tat. He becomes that. So saha equals tat. And in the eighth mantra, he brings back saha again. He brings back the individual into the equation. This is just to give you the thought flow. 4 and 5, he talks of tat, the goal. Sixth mantra, he talks of the individual saha approaching the goal. In the seventh mantra, saha becomes the tat. He becomes the very goal. And when you become the goal, there is no more individuality. So just to clear any doubt, what happens to the person after realization? What happens to the individual? Just to ensure and comfort us, nothing happens to him. The individual doesn't become a spiritual gel. Oh, after realization, do you change your form? Do you become, I had seen a movie, an English movie, if I'm not wrong, it, I think it's Lucy. How many of you have seen that? Lakshmima, you've seen that Lucy, no? Long time ago. Yeah, it is not it's a very old movie. You should look at that movie. And at the end of it, the, the director is talking pure Vedanta. He's trying to capture how the individual becomes that homogeneous consciousness and how he struggles to capture that, how he visualizes it, how does he conveys that, tapping that immense potential which is hidden. You don't realize who you are, and once you reach that, once you become that homogeneous state, the individual disappears and it just merges with everything around. So it's very graphically, it's very, very interesting. But he struggles to convey that, and he does a great job in bringing all that video graphics into it, and it's very, very, if you are attuned that way, it's philosophy, otherwise it's entertainment. I don't know how many who watch the movie understand what it conveys. So just to ensure that you don't become, in fact, that you still retain to be a human and you perform your dharma for eternal years, when you keep doing what your duties are, but the only difference is before realization, you performed as an individual jiva. After realization, you are performing it as a realized soul. So he brings back the element of the individual into the equation of the eighth mantra. Just to tell you, you become the very self. You have attained the state of realization within this lifespan. That's important. It is very much possible to attain that realization within this lifespan. It is not that you have to leave this body, which is the school of thought which says Videha Mukti. There's a school of thought which says that you can attain that state of realization only when you attain physical samadhi, which is Videha Mukti. You have to leave the physical body, attain that, then you attain realization. So the mantra very powerfully suggests against that and say, you can attain realization within Jivan Mukti, means as you're alive, you can attain that state, experience it, and you can roar that truth to the world that you are that Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi, I am that Brahman. And you can say that post-realization. You can say that now, but nobody will hear you. When you say that, then everybody will stand up and take note. That's the difference. Now, this mantra, coming back, he says, to that perceiver of oneness, what delusion, what grief. And what is the cause of delusion or grief? We all are subjected into delusion. We're all going through grief and sorrow. The question is, what is the cause of sorrow? What's the cause of this delusion? Which is no more in self-realized state. Lakshmima, what's the cause of
the attachment? You hear me?
yes?
It's the attachment to the plurality, not seeing the oneness, right? Because you identify with the affections you feel, with the, I'm talking from my own introspection. Yeah, because you identify with the plurality and don't see the oneness. You have not attained the Kalpa Samadhi yet to see the oneness. The attachment basically, Guruji.
So the question is, what causes grief? What causes delusion? You say attachment. See, if you take in the context, I said in the 6th mantra, the seeker has crossed Moha, delusion. The 7th mantra, the 6th mantra, he has crossed, the 6th mantra, he has crossed the grief, shoka. There's no more shoka. In the 7th mantra, he has crossed Moha. So there are actually two possible answers. What causes grief? What causes delusion? There are two different states. Are you able to rationalize the concept that in the 6th mantra is talking? See, when you take texts like these, you can't be generic. You got to be very specific, because every punctuation matters. Every word has to be, split analysis has to be done, because that's the depth of a text. We're not doing a prakriya, we are doing an Upanishad. There's a different frequency altogether. So therefore, we are saying in the 6th mantra, the seeker has crossed shoka. There's no more shoka. There's no more sorrow for him. There's no more grief. Okay, let's take step by step. What causes shoka? What causes grief in our lives? Be impersonal to where you are and think as a philosopher. Philosophically, what causes sorrow? What causes suffering? What causes grief?
Ignorance.
Ignorance. That's again a very generic answer.
Generic.
It can be applied to many aspects of philosophy. You can even apply that to the next question also. What causes moha? Huh?
It's the ego.
Lakshmima, can you unmute yourself, please?
It's the egocentric attachment. That's what.
All right. Okay. It's the egocentric attachment that causes grief or sorrow. All right. Okay. US.
What causes grief? I also have it's because of our attachment. Also, I have to say that. The thought that what we are going through is real. We feel that because this is all Maya. It is It is a belief that the grief we are going through is real.
It is real.
Yeah.
How
But
can
it
you
is
say
a-
it's illusion?
But actually, it is an illusion. It is Maya.
For whom? Your grief is Maya for me. My grief is Maya for you. But for you, it is real. For me, it's real. My grief is real for me. Your grief is real for you. Let's be realistic. Let's not assume the stance that we have reached the mantra 7 state yet. We are not yet reached there. So what we are going through is very much a reality for us. The question is answered from a relative standpoint. What causes sorrow or grief? Because when you say it is everything is illusion, you're taking an absolute stance. You're trying to be in a state where you're not, which you should never be. So you should try to think in terms of what could be the cause, since all of us are subjected to shoka until you cross extrinsic illusion. Remember that. And since we all have not crossed that state, all of us are subjected to grief. So the question is, logically, how do you decode what causes grief, what causes sorrow?
The feeling of otherness also it causes grief, does it? There is no oneness.
Okay. The feeling of otherness, the lack of oneness causes grief. Okay, no comments. I'll take it and leave it at that. Let me hear from Setuji first, please. Yes, sir. Hariom, sir.
Grief, sorrow is because of desires and vasanas. Vasanas are the fundamental reason for our grief. And moha, delusion, is because of dual in the context, duality. We are different from Brahman.
Let me take the first answer, sir, please. You say it is the vasanas and desires that is a cause for shoka and sorrow. How do you say so?
The vasanas lead to thoughts, the chronology, it leads ultimately to suffering, ignorance, and then suffering.
You're being again very general. It doesn't really give us specific.
Attachment leads to cause for attachment is vasanas.
No. Cause, that's a wrong statement to say, sir. You can't say attachment is a cause of vasana.
Yeah, vasanas, thoughts, desires, attachment, suffering.
So therefore, I'm with you when you say that's the chronology. But let's say somebody develops an attachment. A child develops an attachment to a toy. The child has developed an attachment to the toy because of the vasana the child has got for the toy. Is that argument right to establish that it's because of the vasana I've developed an attachment? I don't think we can conclude that way. Vasanas is the very root of your personality, is the very root of my personality.
Desires emanating because of thoughts. Thoughts come from vasanas.
So I have gone through an experience. We have gone through an experience recently. A few of us experienced something. Does it mean you are attached to it?
Or you can say
You may
plural.
have a desire to experience something like that, but that doesn't necessarily mean you are attached to it.
Plurality.
So I'm only trying to clarify, because I'm only seeking clarity in what you have said. because I'm being very specific to the question, what causes grief? Like, for example, I can take what you said. If it's attachment, I understand. But we can't say vasanas and desires are cause of grief. Vasanas and desires are the cause of our personality and our actions. The desires, if you say it's my swadharma is towards philosophy. Another person's swadharma is towards sports. A third person's swadharma is towards business. Whether that person is attached to his business, attached to sport, attached to this. In fact, the team I play with, the badminton every day or every other day I play, they all have gone for a tournament today and tomorrow. They're actually outstation. And I was asked for, as a team member, to be a part of the team, to play for the team, to represent in some national tournament is happening. And said we all can enroll and go and play. Now, if I was attached to that sport, I wouldn't be doing my dharma here of taking this knowledge, this class to you all. If the desire or obsession to play is far greater, I will not be here. Just because I'm just giving an example, please. So if just because I'm doing something doesn't mean it is I'm attached to it. But you can certainly say, why am I engaged in that particular sport? Because I have a particular vasana for it. Fair enough. Why am I not playing basketball? I don't have a vasana for basketball. That's all you can establish when you say vasana, desire. But you can't say vasana and desire is the cause for shoka or sorrow. I'm only trying to establish that. Are you able to think along with me, sir?
But you get attached when you identify with it. Maybe your passion. But the passion should not be to that extent that you think that is everything and you get identified. Then it leads to shoka.
Correct. Therefore, it is not, I'm re-establishing the argument. It is not vasana and desire. It is the wrong relationship to the thought. It is a wrong relationship to the action. It is a wrong relationship to the objects and beings that develop attachment. It is not that vasana and desire the root cause of sorrow. It's attachment. And what's attachment? A wrong relationship to your objects and beings. My only argument to establish is sorrow has got nothing to do with vasanas and desires. That's all I'm saying. I'm just being very technical here because we have to be very clear in the concept wise. I'm saying. If you say attachment causes sorrow, I agree to that. Lakshmi Ma has said, Usha Ma also had mentioned to that. If you are reiterating that point, yes, I agree to that. That's not wrong. But you can't say vasanas causes sorrow.
Ultimately, what is the root cause of that? Then I thought your question is, what is the fundamental root cause for all this? Then
I can think along with you when you say that, but again, it becomes very general, sir. Like Usha Ma said, Maya, illusion. I am in sorrow because of illusion. No, it's not right. We can't say that. Technically, we are not right to say vasanas. It is attachment causes. I can agree with you very much so. Okay, sir. Hariom, sir. Yeah, Subhashrima.
Hariom Guruji.
Hariom.
I feel the grief is because of the disappointment of the not getting the desired object in yourself. Could it be disappointed? Of the human, the human intellect is not able to digest that fact that if I don't get what I want to do, it is just that they feel you are a failure. Like, so can it be that causes grief?
Yes, that could be the cause where as you don't get your object of desire, again, because of attachment, it causes grief. All right, okay, you're coming the same thing. Fair enough. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. You're not wrong. Arnama, any thoughts?
Hari Om Guruji.
Yeah.
My thoughts are almost on the same line, but to add on, I would say that our attachments, our egoistic attachments that causes expectations, and these expectations create conflict with the world. And I feel that causes sorrow. So whatever we expect at the body, mind, intellect level, we do not get it. I feel that causes grief. The ego is it comes from our own egoistic attachments, which creates expectations or conflict with the world. So the feeling of otherness comes. The oneness is not there. So I mean, that's what I'm thinking.
Mm, mm, mm. Yes, yes, yes. That's important. Yes, your thoughts are in line. It's important to think in line in the context of the mantra as well. All right. Okay. Yes, I'm not commenting any further. I'm just trying to get as much input from you all. Yes, Hariji. JBK ji, you want to say something, sir? I saw you raising hand earlier.
Yeah, there's Namaskar, Jai Gurudev.
Namaskar, sir. Namaskar.
See, which is not yours, expectations. The moha is always that you don't have a santrupti, that is a self-satisfaction, that everything is there within you, that if you don't have this knowledge, like other things, kama, krodha, moha, all these things are coming is only because you are not understood everything is within you, which is looking for, which is not yours, expectations, that's all desires. It comes, that is the moha.
Okay. Yes, you're right. Yes, sir. You're not wrong at all. Yes. Again, I'll not comment. We'll take it further. Thank you. Yes, Hariji. Good, sir.
For me, the ego is the cause.
Hmm.
Nothing more than that.
So nothing more to say, no? We can
No.
mute you, no?
Yes.
Please immediately mute him. Not a word further. I'll come back to you, Hariji. Yes. Vasantama. We can't hear you, Vasantama. Try now, please. Yeah.
Hari Om Guruji.
Hari Om.
I feel it is the ego which causes you to not be self-sufficient, you're self-reliant. You're looking in the outside world for your self-peace. That is why it is causing all the grief.
Okay. Interesting thought. You so looks like you have taken the side of Hariji. All right. Right. Ramji, any comments?
Namaste, Guruji.
Namaskar, sir.
I think sequentially, when we see, you mentioned when we did the last one, that the duality and the non-duality, the difference is ego. The ego gets completely liquidated when you reach the non-dual situation. And so in that context, you mentioned that we are affected by the world because of our ego, whether ego is fed or not fed. So I think to answer your question, I feel that when the ego is not fed, you get grief. When the ego is fed, you get moha. So I think what sequentially...
Sorry. Ego is
not fed. You experience grief because your ego is not fed by the world.
okay.
And if your ego is fed, then you experience moha because it increases your attachment to the world. your expectation from the world. I mean, that is my own interpretation. I may be wrong, but essentially you said ego is the one which is either fed or not fed by the world, which is at the end of last number 6 you mentioned. So number 7 coming as a sequence to number 6, I think we can say that if you have crossed that ego stage, that's what you are saying. He's saying that seer of oneness, you will not experience either grief or moha.
So in one ball you took 2 wickets, huh? Huh? So with ego you have answered Shoka and Moha also, huh?
That's what I felt. I may be wrong, but
in fact, the thoughts which Hariji, Vasantama and Ramji have said, others also have touched on it, but the direct Arunam also mentioned it, that what is the cause of grief? Grief is expression, as he says, there is no, he says, no vijigupsa, no abhorrence. That we said arises because of a sense of otherness. And what creates otherness is the ego. So it is the ego that creates otherness, and the otherness that creates abhorrence, and that creates sorrow and suffering in your life. So what causes sorrow is the ego that creates otherness, abhorrence, and sorrow. This is the line of thought. Sitiji, could you get it, sir? Should I repeat it? Did you get what I'm saying? What causes sorrow is?
Yeah.
Could you capture, sir?
Ego creates otherness.
Ego creates otherness.
Then it creates sorrow.
No. It creates otherness. Otherness creates. Gayatrima, what does ego create? Ego creates otherness. Otherness creates
an abhorrence.
an abhorrence.
And abhorrence creates that desires and attachments.
It creates sorrow. Can somebody capture it and type it out, please? Right. So it's just, we are putting in 3 steps. So it is the ego that creates otherness, and otherness that creates abhorrence, and abhorrence creates sorrow. Now, the question we got to clarify here is, how does ego create otherness? And when the identification of ego can be when you identify with your body, the identification with the mind, and identification with the intellect. So when the identification is with the body, the otherness is maximum. When they identify with the mind, the identification is larger, otherness is reduces. Identification with intellect, the otherness still reduces, and the identification, the commonness increases. And you identify with the Atman, there is no otherness at all. There is you and Atman. That is the state of mantra 6.
In other words, plurality.
Yeah, the plurality. The plurality is created because of the ego. I separate myself from the totality. That is the plurality, isn't it? When I separate myself from the totality, there's plurality. Now, I'm just repeating what I've just said. I hope you all captured it. The ego is maximum when you identify with the physical body. So the ego is maximum, otherness is also maximum. Otherness is maximum, abhorrence is maximum, sorrow is maximum. But when the identification is with the mind, the otherness reduces. When you identify with the intellect, the otherness reduces further. Then there's less otherness, there's less friction, there is more peace and joy rather than sorrow and grief. And then when you identify with the Atman, there is you and the Atman, the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So I'm only expanding on the word how ego causes otherness. So this explanation to that is this 4 points: identification with body, with mind, with intellect, and the self. So when you put these 4 points, you'll be able to understand how ego actually, when it's liquidated. Remember, we took the example of a concentrated orange syrup, and you keep pouring gallons and gallons of water and you liquidate the syrup. That's the example we took in the last class. Okay, so this is the 4 steps which talks about how ego creates otherness and abhorrence and sorrow. Lakshmima.
No, it's the mantra, the Leha Bhavena Dosmi, the Hanuman just reminded me of that mantra of Hanuman. What Hanuman said: when I think of my body, I'm your slave. I'm your servant. When I consider my mind, I'm part of you. When I consider myself, you and I are one.
No,
it's also in that context, bhakti.
No. That is in a completely different context. That is
but in a way,
talking
it's
of,
related, isn't
that
it,
is talking
Guruji?
about of Dvaita, Advaita, Vishishta Advaita school of thought. What is the relationship between an individual and the self? 3 schools of thought. The Dvaita take an approach, Advaita take an approach, Vishishta Advaita has a stance. The relationship between individual and the self. Each one says, and to that Hanumanji had a clarification, and he brought in all the 3 apparently contradicting opinions. He just reconcile and say all are saying the same thing because it's only different standpoints. So that is not in the context.
It's not in some way. This is all about Advaitam as well, right? When you realize, when you identify with the Atma, there is no otherness. Advaita is also says that, right? It's all one. So in a way, I don't know, I just related to that when you say,
No. You're just taking
different context.
You're just taking a statement out of that context, and you can't compare that. Okay.
Okay.
Right. So what causes sorrow is that. Now what causes moha? Considering in the 6th mantra, the seeker, having crossed the extrinsic illusion, he has conquered shoka. Now in the 7th mantra, the seeker has not only crossed shoka, he has also crossed moha. Now what is the cause of moha? What causes moha, delusion, is avidya. Avidya is ignorance. The moment you gain that vidya, the knowledge of the self, the delusion that you believe yourself to be other than the self disappears. A straightforward answer. So what causes moha is the ignorance of the self, which makes you believe that you are other than the reality. You are this individual. But how do you get rid of that moha? Is to experience that state through vidya, through knowledge, where you realize yourself. Instantly, the delusory belief that you are this individual instantly disappears. There's no more individuality. So it's easier. Answer is moha. The difficult part was shoka. So the answers to the question, what causes grief? Ashama will clarify what we said. Just repeat what we said, Ma. What causes sorrow or grief? No, I know you have been taking notes. I only want you to read what you have taken notes, that's all.
What causes moha is the ignorance of the self, which makes you believe that you are other than the self.
Correct. Perfect. What causes shoka? After likha hai?
Malum nahi.
The four steps we said. What causes shoka is ego.
Ego creates otherness.
Correct.
Creates abhorrence. Abhorrence creates sorrow.
Correct. This is the equation we're giving, a line of thought. So if you get this, then you can expand further. So when you say it, it is complete. No more further clarification, Ma.
There's just something very nice I have come across. कुछ तो बात होगी तेरे खारेपन में ऐ समंदर. There's something in the saltiness of the ocean. वरना हर मीठी नदी समंदर से मिलने क्यों जाती? Otherwise, why would every river sweet with sweet water would want to merge into the ocean? There's something in the ocean, something in the self that we want to realize it.
See, in poetry, you just can't argue with the perception they have, isn't it? They bring out a beauty in their perception. So what is the beauty of the salt in the ocean, that all the sweet waters want to go and embrace it, huh? Want to go and become it? Very nice, Ma. आप एक ना एक बुक निकालना है ना? Right. Very nice, Ma. Yeah. Yes, Hariji. Thank you.
Hari Om. Can we say that the total dissolution of ego nullifies our grief and delusion? Even that last bit of dot of ego is causing the separation between me and self. So the ultimate cause of even the delusion is that last thought of I, the last
trace of ego, you can say.
The trace of ego. So the total dissolution of ego will free us from shoka and moha.
Yes. If you have to speak in the language of ego, yes.
Yeah.
It is. Right. You're right. In fact, it's right to say that the trace of ego That's the thin film that still separates you from the self, causes moha, which is ignorance. You don't know that you are still that self. The vidya. So it's one and the same, isn't it? Right. Yes, sir. A very, very high state. Let's not even remotely think that we are anywhere near it. But continue to aspire to reach that state, but we are far from it. Now, who am I to dismiss it? I'm not dismissing it. I'm only saying have a right assessment of yourself. Just because you are able to grapple these ideas doesn't mean we are there yet. Yeah, JBKG?
Mataji said, all rivers meet the ocean. It's very interesting. There's most of the rivers can't reach the ocean, which are we are the rivers. We are the rivers. So we have to become Hamsa to enter into ocean. Hamsa means, which I am Atma, I am not the body. That is called Hamsala Devi, which has been given by Rishi. That is Hamsala Devi, where the river go and meet the Krishna river, meet the ocean. Unless you become Hamsa, you cannot enter into. That is a sagar is nothing but is a god. To enter into the god rivers, all we have to reach that. To reach that is you have to become Hamsa.
Now you're giving a geographical statistics. Not every river merges with the ocean. We take that, sir.
Now every day rivers are drying.
Drying, correct. No, we agree. You are concerned. We agree with you. Right, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Jai Guru. Namaskar. Yes, Kamalji.
Hariom Guruji.
Namaskar.
I just wanted to clarify one thought which came to my mind. We generally say the sorrow is more of a condition of our mind. And do we say that that we dilute the ego to such a stage that our mind is with the equanimity attitude for every event which happens in our life, so that we don't see sorrow, whether things we may not like it or dislike it, but we may not feel sorrow because we are equanimous to that event. But our attitude has to be diluted to such an extent that we are like that. As also in, I think in Gita chapter 2, it mentions the wise men are equanimous. They are both, they are equanimous. They have equanimity attitude. Yeah. Because sorrow is happiness, both are all condition of mind only. When we are saying attaching the body or attaching mind or intellect or even to consciousness, attachment itself is the mental condition.
See, I think we are explaining the concept of sorrow here from a slightly different perspective. You're describing it as a state of mind, which is also right. But from it's a very I wouldn't say
my approach by reading verse 6 was that maybe the dilution of attitude will relate to the state of mind.
What attitude?
Means when we are seeing same in everyone, we are not differentiating, we are seeing self in everyone, and we are in ourselves we are seeing everyone. So that will change our attitude and reduce our ego, and that will change our mental state.
See, you are just describing the end state, what the mind exists, but we are talking of the cause. What causes it is the ego, which creates otherness. See, we are talking of the cause, you're talking of the effect. Whether the mind is experiencing joy or sorrow is an effect of a certain thought process. You get it? So the thought process is, if there is you experience a feeling of oneness, there's a more likelihood that you feel no abhorrence, no hatred. Isn't it?
Right.
Once you have no hatred or abhorrence, you don't feel sorrowful. You feel happy. It's like you will always be happy at your own child's progress. But you feel the same joy in a stranger. That's what it is, isn't it? You are able to feel the same ecstasy. You see oneness everywhere. It's just not see yourself in your own child, but you see every child as your own child.
Right.
That kind of a perception we're talking. Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Right, sir. Right. Okay. So just to sum up, when you experience a sense of plurality or otherness, you become the subject, the object is the world. When you experience a sense of plurality, when you experience otherness, you are the subject, the object is the world. But when you experience duality, you become the subject. Rajima, repeat what happens in plurality.
You experience the sense of plurality or otherness, you become the subject, and object is the world.
What is the world? What does the world consist of?
Of things and beings.
Things and beings, nama rupa, isn't
Nama
it?
rupa.
Various plurality. So in plurality, you are the subject, the object is the world. The world consists of the multitudes of objects and beings, things and beings, which is nama rupa. Correct. Now in duality, what happens?
You are the subject and Brahman is the object.
So we will get UK to clarify that. UK is Rajima correctly saying?
Namaste, Guruji. There is some mistake, Guruji.
Irukilya, punishment kudukalama?
The first one she said perfectly, Guruji, so she can be excused.
No, I meant, where is the punishment? To whom is the punishment?
I have to take it.
Punishment is for you, not for her. Punishment kudutla sonna. I didn't say to whom. Now, what is wrong? Can you repeat what Rajima said? In duality, what exists?
In duality, she said me and the Brahman, she said.
Correct. So you, the subject is you and the object is Brahman. So what has the seeker done?
He has separated me and the Brahman. Like the seeker has.
What has a seeker evolved? The plurality of multitudes of things.
Yes, brought
the nama rupa. The nama rupa has become Brahman.
Brahman, yeah.
So subject remains. Subject is you. In plurality, the subject is you. The world is object.
Yes.
In duality, the subject is you. The object is Brahman. What's wrong with that?
then you have stopped seeing the world or anything. What is wrong in that, Guruji? Then it must be okay, like, because you are after all seeking the Brahman. So
Rajima will clarify.
Guruji, again, I'm just giving it a try. The subject is Brahman and the object is you.
Oi, now you need punishment. Now you will get punishment. Correct, Ushama. You are correct. She deserves punishment. How can subject be other than you? Subject is the perceiver. I am the perceiver. Now in the 7th mantra, he says the perceiver of oneness. So I am the perceiver. You get it? In fact, all what we are discussing can be summarized in 3 steps. That's what I'm trying to say. When you see a plurality, there is otherness. You are the subject, the object is the world. When you experience duality, you see all beings in the self, captured exactly the same way I'm saying. I repeat again. I repeat. In plurality, you experience otherness. You are the subject, the object is the world. When you experience duality, you see all beings in the self. You are the subject, the object is Brahman. In the non-dual state, you become Brahman. The subject and object merge. This, in essence, captures all that we have been trying to understand. Ramji, please repeat and summarize, sir. All the confusion will be put to rest.
So, first starting point is plurality, in which we are all there right now. So plurality means you experience otherness, in which you are the subject as well as the object of the world. So that means you are doing all the multiple transactions with the world, and then your ego is at the maximum play level. Then you reach a state of duality where you see yourself and the Brahman, and you see all the other beings as a part of yourself. So that is a part of self. Here you become the subject and Brahman becomes the object. That means you are actually, you have diluted the ego to that extent, and then still that final traces are there. You still see yourself separate from Brahman. So when you reach the non-dual state, you merge with Brahman. That's when subject and object merge. And then you become, this is what is called the oneness that is talked about in verse 7.
Perfect. That's it. Now go and experience it.
Sorry?
Now go and experience it.
Experience it. Yeah. Sure, sir.
All of us have to do that, isn't it? Now, having known the path or the goal to evolution, that's the, keep in mind the mantras 4 to 8 talk about, the topic is goal of evolution. So the 8th mantra, he brings back that, as we have said, he brings back that self of a realized soul, was not just become the en masse consciousness, but he brings back that element of individuality there. Okay. We'll come back to mantra 8. Jayama is asking, Guruji, can you please clarify duality once again? Duality, the world and Brahman relationship. See, we said in the state of duality, there is you experiencing Brahman. So there are two elements, you and God. So that is what is the two elements there. So all the pluralistic phenomenon of names and forms have become Brahman. So wherever you see, whatever you perceive, whatever you experience Brahman. So there is you experiencing Brahman. So in that very statement, you experiencing God or you experiencing Brahman indicates that two elements, that's you and God. This is a state of partial realization. But in the ultimate state of self-realization, they said there is not you experiencing God, you become one with God. That's a state of nirvikalpa samadhi, which is total realization. Okay, ma? We'll come back, think over it, and if any further clarifications, we can take it up. Yes, Hariji?
Hari Om. Can we say that the last trace of ego, when we are talking about, that is our last thought when we are talking about self-realization, that is a state of thoughtlessness. But in the nirvikalpa samadhi state, we are still one thought, that is Brahman. So that that the total thoughts have still not dissolved. There is still one thought, and that is our last thought. When that last thought also is dissolved, then we are in the nirvikalpa samadhi. We are in the thoughtless state.
You can say, yes. You're right, sir. You're right to say so. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll come back. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.